Hey, Holy Girl, welcome back to Holy Girl Talk, the space where we unpack scripture the same way we unpack our lives, honestly, vulnerably, with a little humor, a lot of grace, and zero judgment. If you're new here, welcome to the group chat. And if you've been here since the beginning, you already know the vibe. We talk about God, healing, purpose, boundaries, relationships, and all the messy, beautiful parts of becoming the woman God intended you to be. Today, we are diving into a story that every woman needs to hear, not because it's cute, not because it's romantic, but because it is painfully, beautifully relatable. We're talking about Samson and Delilah. And girl, before you tune out thinking, that's just a story where the girl cut the guy's hair, no ma'am, this is so much deeper than that. This is a story about calling, vulnerability, emotional patterns, the desire to feel chosen, the fear of walking away, ignoring red flags, and that one person you gave way too much access to because your heart wanted something your spirit wasn't at peace with. Because let's be real, every woman at some point has been Samson. Strong, gifted, chosen, filled with potential, but connecting with someone who didn't honor that strength. Someone who loved the idea of you, but not the responsibility of you. Someone who enjoyed your presence, but didn't protect your heart. Someone who wanted your power, but didn't value your purpose. And you stayed because something in you hoped it could work, even when something in you knew it wouldn't. Samson wasn't weak, he was human. He wanted connection, he wanted closeness, he wanted to be seen and loved. And sometimes those desires get so loud that we start downplaying the warning signs God is screaming in our spirit. Samson's downfall wasn't about hair, it was about access. It was about boundaries. It was about vulnerability without discernment. It was about choosing chemistry over clarity. And girl, if you've ever stayed in a situationship you had no business staying in, if you've ever ignored your intuition because you didn't want to be alone, if you've ever tried to prove your loyalty to someone who didn't even deserve your honesty, if you've ever kept giving chances to a person God tried to deliver you from, this episode is for you. Today, we're going to look at Samson's story as a roadmap, not for shame, but for wisdom, for understanding, for healing. Because Samson's story teaches us that being chosen by God does not mean you're immune to poor relational decisions. Being gifted does not protect you from manipulation. Being strong does not make you invincible. And being called does not give you perfect discernment. But here's the part that I want you to hold on to with your whole heart. Samson's story does not end in shame. It ends in redemption. God does not abandon him. God does not revoke his calling. God meets him, restores him, strengthens him again, and uses him even after the heartbreak, even after the mistake, even after the betrayal. And girl, if God can redeem Samson, he can redeem you too. Your past relationships do not disqualify you. Your emotional decisions do not define you. Your heartbreak does not have the final word. You are still called, still chosen, still loved, and still capable of becoming the woman God has always seen in you. So let's talk about Samson. Let's talk about Delilah. But more importantly, let's talk about you. Let's get into it. Before we ever meet Delilah, before the heartbreak, before the manipulation, before the downfall, we meet a man who was chosen, set apart, marked by God from birth. Samson wasn't just strong, he was called. His identity was rooted in purpose long before his emotions ever got involved. And girl, that right there is something we all need to sit with for a moment. Your calling does not begin when a relationship starts, and it does not end when a relationship fails. Your purpose predates every person who has ever walked into your life. Samson's story begins with an angel appearing to his mother and declaring that God had plans for him, big plans. He was born with supernatural strength, destined to lead, destined to deliver, destined to impact his generation. He didn't earn this calling, it was placed on him, and that's the first lesson. Some of you are walking with the strength you don't even realize is special, a calling you didn't ask for, a purpose you didn't choose. There is something God placed on you before life ever complicated things. But here's a tension Samson lived in, and the same one many women live in today. Being chosen does not automatically make you wise. Being gifted does not automatically make you grounded. Being powerful does not automatically make you protected. Samson had strength, but he lacked boundaries. He had purpose, but he struggled with discernment. He had favor, but he didn't always have clarity. And this is where so many women can relate. You can be passionate, talented, beautiful, spiritually gifted, emotionally intelligent, and still vulnerable to the wrong kind of relationships if your boundaries are not intact. Because identity without boundaries is an open door. Calling without wisdom is a liability. Purpose without protection is exhausting. Samson grew up with everyone seeing his potential, his strength, his uniqueness, his anointing. And girl, when people see your power before you fully understand it, you become vulnerable to attention that isn't healthy. People are drawn to your light, but not everyone who admires your light has good intentions for your life. Before Delilah ever stepped onto the scene, Samson had a pattern of being attracted to people who did not honor his calling. Patterns don't start with the final person who hurts you. Patterns start quietly, slowly, subtly. Samson already had a history of connecting with the wrong women, entertaining relationships that pulled him away from purpose rather than toward it. Delilah wasn't the beginning of the problem. She was simply the one who completed the pattern. And this is something women need to hear gently but truthfully. Sometimes the person who breaks you is not the source of the wound, they are the culmination of a wound you never healed. Samson wasn't weak, he was unprotected. He wasn't foolish, he was emotionally unguarded. He didn't lack purpose, he lacked discernment in his relationships. But here is what makes Samson's story so relevant today. He desired connection, he desired intimacy, he desired love. And those desires, if not guided by wisdom, will pull you into relationships that your purpose can't survive. Samson's calling didn't fail him. His strength didn't fail him. His anointing didn't fail him. His boundaries failed him. And girl, when your boundaries fail, everything else eventually follows. Before Delilah, Samson's biggest challenge wasn't the enemy. It was his own openness with the wrong people. It was his willingness to share sacred parts of himself with people who hadn't proven they could protect those parts. Samson teaches us that your gifting can take you places. Your vulnerability can't sustain if you aren't careful about who gets access to your heart. And this is why understanding your identity is crucial. If you do not know who you are, you will misinterpret the attention you receive. If you do not know your purpose, you will attach your worth to the wrong people. If you do not understand your calling, you will allow relationships to define you instead of protect you. Samson's story begins with greatness, but greatness without boundaries is a magnet for destruction. Now enter Delilah, and girl, let's just be honest, we all have a Delilah moment in our story. That one person who walks in with charm, confidence, energy, chemistry, intensity, someone who makes you feel seen, chosen, wanted, desired, and suddenly you're caught in something that feels powerful but isn't necessarily healthy. When Delilah steps into Samson's life, the Bible doesn't say she loved him, it says he loved her. Which means right away, the emotional imbalance is already there. Samson is attached, Delilah is strategic. Delilah wasn't drawn to Samson because of who he was. She was drawn to Samson because of what he carried, his strength, his influence, his anointing, the access he represented. And holy girl, hear this with love. Some people are attracted to your power, not your person. They want proximity to your strength, your gifting, your presence, your energy, your confidence, your potential, but they have no interest in protecting the heart behind all of that. This is where we learn the first major relationship lesson from Samson. Attraction is not alignment. Chemistry isn't clarity. Desire isn't destiny. A connection isn't a covenant. Samson felt something for Delilah, but that feeling blinded him long before it betrayed him. And isn't that the way emotional entanglements usually work? You're not foolish, you're not naive, you're not clueless. You just feel something that makes you override the red flags your spirit is quietly raising. Delilah represents the kind of relationship where the emotional pull is strong, but the spiritual alignment is non-existent. On the surface, things feel exciting, flattering, like a rush, like validation. But underneath, something doesn't sit right. You feel spiritually unsettled, emotionally off, like you're giving more than you should, like you're bending parts of yourself to keep the connection alive. Samson wasn't ruined by Delilah's beauty. He was undone by his own desire to be wanted. And that is the part that hits deep for so many women. Because sometimes the real danger isn't the person in front of you, it's the unresolved need inside of you that makes their attention feel like love. Let's be real. Have you ever stayed because you wanted to prove you were worth choosing? Have you ever ignored red flags because you didn't want to start over again? Have you ever held onto potential instead of reality? Have you ever convinced yourself, if I just love them enough, they'll change? Have you ever quieted your intuition because affection felt like safety? That's the Samson pattern, not stupidity, but emotional longing without spiritual grounding. Delilah didn't steal Samson's strength, she simply asked for it, slowly, repeatedly, gently, strategically, because manipulation doesn't always look like control. Sometimes it looks like comfort. Sometimes it looks like curiosity. Sometimes it looks like, if you love me, prove it. Sometimes it looks like, tell me more about yourself. When the real intention is not intimacy, it's extraction. Delilah wasn't a random woman. She represented the type of connection that appeals to your emotional weaknesses while draining your spiritual strength. She mirrors modern relationships where you feel spiritually dry but emotionally attached, where your peace is declining but your desire is increasing, where the more you give, the less you feel like yourself. Samson didn't fall because he was weak. He fell because he was unguarded around the wrong person. And girl, let that sink in. Because this isn't about judging Samson, it's about understanding how easy it is to confuse soulful desire with spiritual alignment. How easy it is to mistake intensity for intimacy. How easy it is to choose connection over calling. Delilah's entrance teaches us this truth. The enemy doesn't always send distraction. Sometimes he sends desire. Not everything that feels good is good for you. Not everyone who wants access deserves it. Not every person who shows interest has pure intentions. But here's the hope. God doesn't reveal Delilah to shame you. He reveals Delilah to save you, to awaken you, to refine your discernment, to strengthen your boundaries, to prepare you for relationships that won't drain your spirit or compromise your calling. Delilah wasn't just a woman. She was a warning, a mirror, a lesson, and a turning point in Samson's story. Because what's coming next? Whoo! That's where the red flags get loud and the emotional pressure gets real. If we're being honest, Samson didn't fall because Delilah was powerful. He fell because he ignored the signs that she wasn't safe. And girl, isn't that the part we hate to admit? The truth that deep down we usually know something is off, but we stay anyway. We convince ourselves it's not that big of a deal. We minimize the discomfort, we spiritualize the red flags, we tell ourselves we're overreacting, we romanticize potential, we hope the inconsistency is temporary. We cling to the good moments and ignore the patterns. Delilah didn't betray Samson out of nowhere. She told him who she was from the beginning, through her actions, through her questions, through her persistence. The problem wasn't that Samson didn't see the red flags. The problem was that he didn't honor them. The first red flag appears the moment Delilah starts asking him about the source of his strength. Not casually, not playfully, not out of intimacy, but with pressure, with intention, with an agenda. She wasn't trying to understand him. She was trying to disarm him. And girl, this is the emotional dynamic that so many of us have fallen into. Someone starts asking for more access, more vulnerability, more secrets, more of your heart, without offering protection, commitment, or safety in return. But Samson keeps playing along. He jokes about it. He tests her loyalty. He gives her partial truth to see what she'll do, and every time she betrays him immediately. Let's sit in that for a moment. He gives her a piece of his truth, and she weaponizes it. He reveals something minor and she uses it to harm him. He sees her pattern clearly and still stays. That is not stupidity. That is emotional attachment overpowering discernment. That is the psychology of toxic relationships. That is the cycle so many women experience. You make an excuse for the first betrayal. You overlook the second one. You rationalize the third. You blame yourself for the fourth. And by the time you hit the fifth, you're too emotionally invested to walk away. Delilah keeps pressing him. Tell me your secrets. Tell me what makes you strong. Tell me what you're afraid to tell anyone else. But her goal is exposure, not closeness. And Samson feels the pressure because emotional manipulation doesn't come with a warning label. It comes with, why don't you trust me? If you really loved me, why are you being difficult? Why won't you open up? Everyone else would tell their partner, you're making me feel like I don't matter. Girl, guilt is not intimacy. Pressure is not love. Manipulation is not vulnerability. And anyone who makes you feel obligated to reveal parts of yourself you're not ready to share is not protecting you. They're positioning themselves to control you. The Bible says Delilah pressed Samson day after day until his soul was vexed to death. In plain language, she wore him down emotionally. She exhausted his boundaries. She chipped away at his resistance. She exploited his need for connection. She used persistence as manipulation. And eventually, he broke. This is why boundaries matter. This is why discernment matters. This is why emotional self-awareness matters. Because a boundary that wears thin today becomes a breach tomorrow. Samson wasn't destroyed in one moment. He was drained over time. And here's the part that hits hardest. The enemy doesn't need to attack your strength directly. He just needs access to your heart. Because once your heart is tired, your judgment weakens. Once your judgment weakens, your discernment dims. Once your discernment dims, your calling becomes vulnerable. Delilah wasn't the danger. Samson's willingness to stay was. And girl, before you judge him, think about the last time you stayed in something after God told you to leave. The last time you ignored a pattern because the attention felt good. The last time you held on to potential because you didn't want to confront reality. The last time you let loneliness negotiate with your intuition. The last time you prayed for clarity and then ignored it because it wasn't the answer you wanted. Samson didn't lose his strength because he was weak. He lost his strength because he kept giving access to someone who had already proven they couldn't hold it with care. And that's the lesson. Every ignored red flag becomes a rope that ties you to the wrong person. There comes a moment in every unhealthy relationship, not one big explosive moment, but a slow, quiet breaking point where you give away something sacred, something deeper than you meant to, something more vulnerable than the other person ever earned. And that's exactly what happens to Samson. After all the games, all the tests, all the manipulative questions, all the emotional exhaustion, he finally gives in and tells Delilah the truth. Not a joke, not a half answer, not a decoy. The real truth, the secret of his strength. And girl, this is where the story shifts from dramatic to devastating. Because the moment Samson reveals the secret is the moment we see how emotional fatigue can override spiritual discernment. He wasn't thinking clearly. He wasn't in alignment. He wasn't empowered. He was worn down. And let this sink in gently. People rarely ruin their lives when they're strong. They ruin their lives when they're tired. Samson didn't give Delilah the truth because he trusted her. He gave her the truth because resisting her had become too heavy. He was drained, depleted, spiritually disconnected, and that is what made him vulnerable. This is why emotional exhaustion is one of the most dangerous states a woman can be in. When your boundaries are tired, your judgment weakens. When your spirit is tired, your standards lower. When your heart is tired, your desire for peace overrides your wisdom. Samson had been carrying his calling alone for so long that the desire to be understood became stronger than the desire to be protected. And isn't that exactly how so many of us slip into the wrong relationships? We don't open up because the person is safe. We open up because we're tired of carrying things alone. This moment shows us a powerful truth. Vulnerability is holy, but only when it's shared with the right person. Not everyone deserves access to your heart. Not everyone deserves your fears. Not everyone deserves your history. Not everyone deserves your softness. Not everyone deserves the parts of you that were meant to be guarded. Samson reveals the secret of his strength, the very thing God entrusted to him, to a woman who had already shown she was willing to hurt him. He confuses emotional intensity with emotional safety. He confuses pressure with intimacy. He confuses attachment with alignment. And girl, so many women have been there. You gave someone your truth, hoping they'd treasure it. You gave them your vulnerability, hoping they'd hold it gently. You opened your heart, hoping they'd protect it. You shared your wounds, hoping they'd heal with you. You let them see you deeply, hoping that meant they'd love you deeply. But instead, they used your openness against you. They used your honesty to manipulate you. They used your vulnerability to gain power over you. They used your intimacy as leverage. That's Delilah, not the woman, the spirit of Delilah. The pattern, the energy, the dynamic. When Samson tells Delilah the truth, she doesn't even pretend to care. She doesn't comfort him. She doesn't honor the moment. She doesn't soften. She immediately betrays him. She calls the Philistine leaders. She sells him out for money. She takes advantage of his exhaustion. She takes advantage of his love. She takes advantage of his openness. And this is why we say discernment comes before disclosure. Before you open your heart, evaluate their character. Before you tell your secrets, study their patterns. Before you become vulnerable, ask if they've shown consistency, loyalty, and trustworthiness. Samson didn't lose his strength because he told Delilah his secret. He lost his strength because he gave the wrong person access to the sacred parts of himself. And holy girl, if you hear nothing else from this entire episode, hear this. Never give someone access to your soul who has not earned access to your heart. Not everyone who desires you deserves to know you. Not everyone who asks for vulnerability is capable of protecting it. Not everyone who wants intimacy has the character to sustain it. Samson's story is not about foolishness. It is about humanity, about longing, loneliness, desire, emotional fatigue, and the cost of sharing sacred things with someone who was never meant to hold them. But oh, the next part, the fall, the consequences, the moment everything breaks. That's where we go next, and it's going to speak to the women who have ever felt broken by a relationship they gave too much of themselves to. When Samson finally gives Delilah the truth, it sets off a chain reaction that every woman who has ever trusted the wrong person will recognize. Delilah waits until he is asleep because betrayal always comes when you're most vulnerable. She calls the men who have been hiding nearby, waiting for their moment. They cut his hair, his symbol of consecration, his God-given strength, the very thing he promised God he would protect. And then the most heartbreaking line in the entire story is written. He did not know that the Lord had left him. Judges 16:20. But let's pause because this verse is often misunderstood. God did not leave Samson in the emotional sense. God did not abandon him. God did not withdraw his love. What left Samson was the anointing tied to his vow, the strength that was spiritually connected to his obedience. Samson lost his strength not because God punished him, but because Samson broke the boundary that protected that strength. And girl, this is exactly what happens in our lives when we give away parts of ourselves that were meant to be guarded. We don't lose our value, we lose our clarity. We don't lose God, we lose our confidence. We don't lose our worth, we lose our sense of direction. We don't lose our identity, we lose sight of it. Samson wakes up believing he can shake himself free like before, believing he can just bounce back, push through, rely on old strength. But this time is different. This time the weight of the betrayal hits him physically, spiritually, emotionally. This time the cost isn't just a bad moment, it's a collapse. And haven't we all felt that feeling? The moment you realize the person you trusted was never who you thought they were, the moment the relationship ends and you're staring at the emotional wreckage, the moment you wake up and think, how did I get here? The moment you don't feel like yourself anymore. The moment your peace is gone, your joy is gone, your spark is gone. Not because you are weak, but because you let someone who didn't honor your heart get too close. Samson is seized, captured, humiliated. The first thing the Philistines do is gouge out his eyes. They take his vision, and this is symbolic, holy girl, because the enemy always wants to blind you after he breaks you, not physically, but spiritually. Break your boundaries, then steal your clarity. Break your confidence, then steal your purpose. Break your heart, then steal your hope. Samson is now grinding grain in a prison, doing the work of an animal. The strongest man in Israel reduced to a cycle of exhaustion, going in circles, repeating the same motions with no progress. And that symbolizes what happens when a woman gives too much of herself to the wrong person. She gets stuck in loops, cycles, patterns. She's moving, but she's not going anywhere. She's alive, but not thriving. She's functioning, but not fulfilled. The fallout is real. The exhaustion is real. The heartbreak is real. The loss of self is real. But this right here is the moment where Samson's story shifts. Because even though Samson is broken, blind, and bound, the Bible inserts one small, powerful sentence. but the hair on his head began to grow again. Judges 16:22. We could preach a whole sermon right there. Because the enemy can cut your hair, but he cannot stop it from growing back. He can break your heart, but he cannot cancel your destiny. He can interrupt your season, but he cannot rewrite your purpose. He can take your strength, but he cannot take God's hand off your life. He can blind your vision, but he cannot stop God from restoring it. Samson's hair growing back represents healing, restoration, redemption, renewal, the slow return of confidence, the quiet rebuilding of identity. And girl, this is where your story intersects with his. Because after every heartbreak, after every mistake, after every Delilah, after every season you didn't protect yourself, after every moment you gave too much, your hair grows back, your strength returns, your vision clears, your faith reignites, your standards rise, your boundaries sharpen, your spirit heals. Samson's fall wasn't the end, it was the reset. And your fall isn't the end either. If Samson's fall is heartbreaking, then his redemption is breathtaking. Because this is the part of the story that proves loudly, boldly, unapologetically that God does not give up on you, even when you give up on yourself. Samson made choices that cost him everything. He ignored warnings, he crossed boundaries, he trusted the wrong person. He landed in a place he never imagined, and yet God was not done with him. Samson is standing in that prison, blind, humiliated, betrayed, stripped of the very strength that defined him, and for the first time in his entire story, he finally prays. Not in arrogance, not in pride, not in self-confidence, not in a moment of invincibility, but from a place of humility, brokenness, and honesty. And girl, sometimes it's not until we hit rock bottom that we finally talk to God with our whole heart, because pain has a way of clearing our ego. Loss has a way of revealing what matters. Betrayal has a way of stripping away illusions. And heartbreak has a way of bringing us back to the feet of the only one who can restore us. Samson prays the most vulnerable, powerful words of his life. Sovereign Lord, remember me, please. Judges 16:28. He doesn't ask God to undo the past. He doesn't ask God to erase the consequences. He doesn't ask God to make Delilah love him. He doesn't ask God for an easier life. He asks God to remember him, to come near, to strengthen him again, to restore what he lost, not physically, but spiritually. And this is where we see the beauty of God's character. God remembers broken people. He remembers the woman who feels ashamed. He remembers the girl who regrets her choices. He remembers the one who loved too hard, stayed too long, ignored the signs. He remembers the woman who feels like she ruined her chance at love or purpose. He remembers the one who thinks she should have known better. Your mistakes do not erase God's memory of who you are. Samson stands between the two pillars of the Philistine temple, pillars that represent everything trying to hold him down. And with one final surge of strength, one last act of obedience, one moment of faith, God empowers him again. Samson collapses the structure that imprisoned him, and in doing so, he defeats more enemies in his final moment than he did in his entire lifetime. And girl, the symbolism here is so rich, so profound, so healing. Your comeback can be stronger than your fall. Your healing can be greater than your heartbreak. Your restoration can do more for your purpose than your pain ever did. Your final chapter can carry more victory than every chapter that came before it. Samson's last moment wasn't a moment of defeat, it was a moment of destiny. His purpose was restored. His calling was activated. His story was redeemed. His failures did not get the final say. His heartbreak did not get the final say. God got the final say. God got the final say. God got the final say. And the same is true for you. Your Delilah moment doesn't define you. Your mistakes don't disqualify you. Your heartbreak doesn't ruin you. Your past doesn't disempower you. Your vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a doorway back to God. Samson's story proves something every woman needs to hear. God can still use you after the relationship that broke you, after the betrayal that crushed you, after the choices you regret, after the seasons where you walked away from wisdom, after the nights you cried yourself to sleep. After the moment you lost yourself trying to love someone else, God restores. God rebuilds. God remembers. God rescues. God repurposes your pain into strength. Samson died with his hair growing back, meaning he died in recovery, not defeat. His story ends not with failure, but with fulfillment. Not with shame, but with victory. Not with brokenness, but with purpose. And girl, yours can too. Your hair is growing back. Your strength is returning. Your standards are rising. Your boundaries are sharpening. Your vision is clearing. Your purpose is awakening. Your spirit is healing. This is not the end. This is the rebuilding. When we bring Samson and Delilah into modern life, their story becomes more than an ancient narrative. It becomes a mirror. Samson teaches us that you can be called, gifted, beautiful, successful, spiritual, and powerful, and still struggle with relationships if you don't have boundaries that match your purpose. His downfall shows how easy it is to confuse desire for alignment and how quickly emotional attachment can override spiritual discernment. Many women today find themselves in situations just like Samson's, giving too much, hoping too hard, staying too long, and trusting too deeply in relationships that don't honor their worth. The lesson isn't that you shouldn't love, the lesson is that you should love with clarity, honesty, and wisdom. Healthy relationships require boundaries, not walls, but standards. Boundaries are the quiet, powerful way you honor the calling on your life. They protect your peace, your emotions, your energy, your time, and your spirit. When a woman lacks boundaries, she becomes vulnerable to people who admire her strength but cannot steward it. Samson's story teaches us that access to you should be earned, not assumed. Not everyone who desires you is equipped to value you. Not everyone who pursues you is prepared to protect you. Not everyone who wants your vulnerability has the emotional maturity to handle it with care. Discernment is the art of recognizing the difference between attention and intention. We also learn that red flags are not random, they are information. Delilah showed Samson who she was long before she betrayed him, but emotional longing made him ignore what his spirit already sensed. Many women today repeat this pattern. We fall for potential. We overlook inconsistencies. We justify behavior that contradicts our values, and we choose connection over clarity. But spiritual maturity means learning to trust your intuition the first time. It means choosing alignment over chemistry. It means valuing your future more than your fear of being alone. Samson's story teaches us that ignoring red flags doesn't make the relationship better, it just prolongs the heartbreak. Another lesson we take from Samson is that vulnerability is precious. Your softness, your secrets, your dreams, your wounds, your desires, these are not things you give to everyone. Vulnerability is a gift you offer to those who have proven themselves safe, consistent, loyal, and invested. Samson's mistake was not that he loved, it was that he loved without discernment. He gave intimate access to someone who had already shown she did not value him. And many women do the same. We confuse emotional intensity for love, or we believe we can save someone with our loyalty. But true love requires mutual protection, not one-sided sacrifice. Finally, Samson's redemption reminds us that even if we've made poor choices, God is not finished with us. Your past relationships do not disqualify you from future love. Your mistakes do not cancel your calling. Your heartbreak does not diminish your worth. Samson's strength returned, his purpose resurfaced, and God used him powerfully even after his lowest moment. The same is true for you. You can rebuild. You can recover. You can rise again. You can choose better, see clearer, and love smarter because wisdom comes from experience. Healthy love is still possible for you. Love that honors your heart, protects your spirit, aligns with your purpose, and feels like peace instead of confusion. Samson's story is not simply a cautionary tale, it's an invitation. An invitation to develop boundaries that reflect your worth, to choose relationships that align with your calling, to protect the sacred parts of yourself, and to walk with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing God will never leave you in the hands of the wrong person. His story reminds you that you are strong, chosen, and capable of cultivating relationships rooted in mutual honor, emotional safety, and spiritual alignment. And when a woman with boundaries and discernment steps into love, she becomes unstoppable. All right, holy girl, take a breath. I know today's episode was a lot. Samson and Delilah will do that to you. They pull up every old memory, every hard lesson, every emotional bruise we don't always want to admit we've lived through. But if you're leaving this episode feeling seen, understood, a little convicted, and a whole lot more empowered, that means God used this moment exactly the way He intended. Because here's the truth, you are wiser now. You are stronger now. You are more self-aware now. You're learning what aligns with your calling and what does not. You're learning how to guard your heart without hardening it. You're learning how to choose relationships that honor your spirit instead of draining it. And baby, if Samson's story taught us anything today, it's that God can rebuild you from anything. Nothing you've been through is wasted. Nothing disqualifies you. And nothing can stop God from restoring your strength. So if this episode blessed you, challenged you, made you rethink a few relationships, or reminded you that you deserve love that protects you, do me a favor, holy girl, follow the podcast, share this episode with a friend, and post it on your story so another woman can get this word today. You never know who's silently struggling in a Delilah situation and needs this exact encouragement. And if you have prayer requests, if you want to share a testimony, or if there's a topic you want me to dive into on a future episode, you can always email me at holygirltalkpodcast@gmail.com. I love hearing from you. This is our space, our community, our sisterhood. You're not walking your faith journey alone. I'm right here with you every week. All right, beautiful. Keep protecting your peace, honoring your calling, and choosing people who are capable of loving you well. And remember, God will always restore what you thought you lost. He's not done with you, not even close. I'll see you in the next episode. Love you, holy girl.